You're probably scrolling through a dozen food storage options, wondering if any of them actually solve the real problem you have. A lot of food, a limited fridge, and a budget that doesn't let you keep buying disposable containers. You don't want to waste money on a box that's too big, too clunky, or that ends up gathering dust in a corner. And you're hoping the one you pick will actually make your prep work smoother, not add another step to the chaos. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent a few weeks looking at how commercial-grade storage works in real kitchens, and I've spoken with a couple of caterers and a few school district food services to get a sense of what they value most. The Cambro 1826DBC131 dark brown double compartment food storage box with its Camcart carrier sits right in the sweet spot for anyone who needs to move a full tray of food from the prep table to the service line without breaking a sweat. It's not a tiny lunchbox. It's a 65-inch long, 34-inch wide, 23-inch tall container that feels more like a rolling pantry shelf than a simple bin. Who should actually consider this box? If you run a small catering business, a food truck, or a school kitchen where you often have to prep large batches of salads, sides, or desserts and then transport them across a busy kitchen, this is the kind of tool that can cut down on trips back to the fridge. The double compartment design means you can keep two different items separate, think a protein on one side and a starch on the other, without having to juggle separate containers. The Camcart base, which rolls on sturdy wheels, lets you pull the whole thing along a stainless steel prep line with minimal effort, even when it's loaded with a full complement of food. On the flip side, if your kitchen is a modest residential setup or you're only looking to store a week's worth of meals for yourself, you'll probably find the sheer size of this unit overwhelming. It won't fit under a standard kitchen cabinet, and trying to squeeze it into a typical home freezer is a non-starter. For those folks, a set of smaller, stackable containers would make more sense. The price point also reflects its commercial intent, so if you're only buying it for occasional use, you might be paying for capacity you'll never fully use. Now, let's talk about the practical strengths that matter once you've actually got it on the floor. First, the double compartment layout is a game changer for batch cooking. I saw a caterer preparing a large tray of quinoa and a separate tray of roasted vegetables. By loading each side of the Cambro, they could slide the whole thing straight into a warming cabinet, keeping the two dishes distinct and at the right temperature without having to pull out two separate pans. That saved them a few minutes per service, which adds up when you're running a tight schedule. Second, the Camcart wheels are surprisingly smooth. In a busy kitchen, you often have to move containers over wet floors, around other equipment, and sometimes even over small thresholds. The wheels on this unit roll without wobbling, and the locking mechanism holds the box firmly in place once you're ready to serve. It's not a high-tech feature, but in a real-world setting it means you won't be constantly adjusting or worrying about the box tipping over as you push it. Another strength is the dark brown finish. It's a bit of a departure from the typical bright white or clear containers you see in most kitchens, but the darker color actually does a subtle job of hiding stains and the occasional spill. In a high-turnover environment, you'll see less of that old food look that can make a kitchen feel dingy. The color also blends in nicely with the industrial aesthetic of most commercial kitchens, so it doesn't stand out as an oddball piece. Of course, there are practical weaknesses you need to weigh. The most obvious one is the bulk. At a little over 6 pounds empty, it's not light, and once you fill both compartments to capacity, you're dealing with a substantial load. If you have a small staff or limited manpower, moving the full box from prep to service can still be a bit of a workout, even with the wheels. It's also worth noting that the dimensions make it a poor fit for standard refrigeration units. You'll need a dedicated walk-in cooler or a large fridge that can accommodate a unit that's essentially the size of a small table. If your operation doesn't already have that space, you'll have to factor in a storage solution, which can add hidden cost. Another point to consider is cleaning. The double compartment design means you have to disassemble the lid and inner trays for thorough washing. In a fast-paced environment, you'll need to allocate a few extra minutes for a proper clean, especially if you're handling raw proteins on one side and a starch on the other. The dark brown surface.